Alright guys, we're going to start with mixing up our colors. You don't have to use the exact same colors that I did, but basically I am mixing together Payne's gray, black, a touch of a purple. I wanted sort of an interesting mixture of colors. I added a touch of indigo as well. And you want a pretty diluted mixture for this because we're going to use this to paint the sky. It's a night sky, but I don't want it to be completely dark. I want it to have a good contrast with the land and the trees. So I'm going to draw my horizon line. I have trouble keeping my horizon lines straight, so I've gotten into a habit of just going ahead and drawing it with a ruler, and I'm going to erase most of it so that it doesn't show through to the final painting. And then we're going to start with wetting the upper portion where the sky is going to be with clean water. And by the way, I'm using a 4x6 piece of watercolor paper. This is my Montval, Carson Montval watercolor block. It is cold press. So we're painting the sky in with the mixture that we just made. Just loosely lay down a light layer of colors. We want the upper corners of the sky to be a tad darker. So while the sky is still wet, I'm going to use a small piece of paper towel and dab out a circle where I want the moon to be. And don't worry too much about making sure that this is completely white. We can use white gouache or even white acrylic paint later on. So just kind of pick up a little bit of that color in the sky to give us an idea of where the moon is going to be. So I noticed that my paper is already starting to dry, especially at the bottom there where the horizon is. So I'm just lightly re-wetting it with clean water. When you re-wet and your paper at the bottom is still a little damp, you don't want to press too hard or you're going to move the pigments too much. So be very gentle with the re-wetting process unless your paper is already pretty dry. So I'm dropping in a thicker, a darker value of the same mixture that I made. So I just made a whole another mixture of it, but with less water. So I am using a smaller size round brush right now to drop in the colors. This is going to be my tree lines in the distance. I'm tilting my paper so that it doesn't spider web up into the sky too much, so that I can kind of control where the water and the pigments go. Try to be random with this. Your brain is going to try to make it very symmetrical. So break away from that and dab in your tree lines in varying heights. I'm using a smaller brush so that it doesn't dump a lot of water all at once onto my paper. That can create a lot of hard edges once it dries, and it's just a little bit harder to control. So I'm using a smaller brush so that I can have better control of how much pigments I put down, how much water. This is going to dry a lot lighter than it looks right now, but at the same time, we don't want this layer to be our darkest value either, because we're going to be adding even darker trees on top of this later. So right now I'm just gently using the tip of my brush to blend out the colors there at the horizon line. I'm just using this opportunity to create some textures and shadows in the snowy field. Don't cover up all of the white areas. We want to leave a lot of white areas because that is our snow. We just want to add some shadows here and there. Make sure you concentrate most of your shadow there at the corner of the landscape, kind of the area closest to you. And make sure you're using a very light mixture of the colors. So we're going to dry this layer completely before we move on to the next steps. All right, you see how the tree line dried a lot lighter than it looked when it was wet. So this is perfect. This is great because we're going to be adding some darker trees on top of that. So I guess these would be trees that are a little bit closer to where the viewer is. So we can make out a little bit more details of these trees. So we're doing wet on dry technique right now. I'm mixing up another batch of similar colors. I'm also adding a touch of perylene green too for some interest and a tinge of green in this scene. So it's you know, more varied in colors and in hues. So we're gonna go ahead and use the tip of our brush and paint in a tree line there, or a trunk. And then use whatever brush you're comfortable with, whether it be a foliage brush or a small round brush, and take your time and paint in the branches. This can be any types of trees you want, by the way. It doesn't have to be the one that I'm painting. So when you're happy with your trees, use the tip of your brush in clean water and blend out the bottom where the tree meets the snow. We want to ground the tree with a little bit of a suggestion of shadow. Since my moon is on the left side, I am putting my shadow on the right side of the trees. So we want to make sure that this is consistent with all of our shadows, with all of our trees or subjects. Next I decided to use my flat foliage brush. I picked up some color and I'm rubbing most of the color off on a clean scratch sheet of paper, and I'm using the texture on my foliage brush to help me create textures or suggestions of trees in the distance. You don't want to make this, you know, detailed or dark. Just be very loose and suggestive. Just I think it really adds to the overall look of the distant trees. The textures, the scratches. If you scratch too much, if you lay down too much color like I did over there on the left side, you can always get a clean moist brush and just blend it out. That's okay. So we're going to paint the tree closest to us. So as a result, it is going to be the biggest tree in our painting. I always have a lot of trouble painting a straight line. I was very nervous that my tree was going to end up leaning to the right. So if you're not comfortable with drawing a straight line, just use a pencil and a ruler and draw your line first and then paint on top of it. Or just go for it. That's okay. Trees lean too. So just like in the distant trees, draw your trunk and then take your time and draw in your branches. Remember when you do the shadow, the darkest part of the shadow will be the part closest to the trunk or the base of the tree, and then it blends out and gets lighter. I decided to add another tree in the distance there because I noticed that I have had 4 trees in the background and I wanted to have an odd number for, you know, compositional reasons. I think it would just look better. So I added another one. You can add as many as you want or as few as you want. That is completely up to you. I'm just adding a little bit of grass and branches sticking out of the snow here and there. And remember to give the grass blades their own shadows too on the snow. All right, my friends. I am no expert in perspective when it comes to drawing. But I've seen this done this way before, so we're going to give it a try. But first, make sure your painting is completely dry before you try to draw on it. So we're going to attempt to draw a fence line going into the distance away from us. So it's going to be bigger on the left side and then getting smaller as it goes to the right side. All right, so I'm using my trusty ruler to draw my perspective line. So it's what I've drawn is that the top line that I drew will be the top part of the fence post, and then the bottom line would be the bottom part. So I just have to kind of follow along in between my drawn lines, right? And it should look fine. So let's just see how it goes. Maybe you want to watch me first and before you try it. But I trust in myself. I trust in us. So basically the fence posts are going to look closer and closer to each other as it goes away from us as well. So keeping that in mind. So I went ahead and drew in my fence posts as a good guidance. And I think that looks great. It doesn't have to be perfect here. We are not shooting for perfection. And fence posts can be wonky too. It's made out of natural wood, or whatever is laying around, maybe, I don't know. So it doesn't have to be a straight line. It can be trying to fall down as well. That's cool. And then make sure your lines are smaller. The posts are smaller or thinner as it goes away from you. So yeah, I think that looks great. And then we're going to attempt to draw the wires, I think, barbed wires or ropes that go in between the fence posts. And that can be drawn in very lightly, very, very subtly, and just kind of suggestive. All right, so I'm happy with my fence. Just like the trees, they need a shadow too. Remember to keep it on directionally correct, so away from the light source. And remember the darkest part of the shadow will be right where it's closest to the subject itself, and then it kind of blends out. And don't forget the I guess the ropes or the stuff in between each post will have a shadow as well, so you don't forget to paint that in, and that can be subtle. Yeah, so take your time and paint in your shadows. Now I'm using white gouache. You can use a white gel pen or acrylics, but I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin white gouache to paint in my moon. Just a white circle, nothing special. And then I decided to add little specks of snow on the trees. You can manually do this, just take your time and place little dabs of white gouache all along the tree. You don't want to cover up the whole tree. I love how the snow kind of made the trees glow a little bit. And don't forget to add some snow on the fence as well, just a little bit, just a suggestion of it. Especially right at the tip top and a little bit at the bottom of the base of the fence. And lastly, I am picking up gouache. Looks like I need a new bottle with my foliage brush, making sure I have enough water as well. And I am going to splatter snow. You don't have to have a foliage brush. You can use a regular round brush to pick up some of the gouache and hit it onto another brush to splatter. But I wanted to use my foliage brush so I can kind of flicker snow. I like that the flickering part creates more smaller splatters, just kind of finer splatters. And since my painting is small, I didn't want huge splatter spots, if that makes any sense. And you can splatter to your heart's content. But this painting is mostly white, so it's not going to show up very much, but it's still fun. And then this is really just sort of the details part. What's missing? What do we need to add? And I noticed that my shadows in the snow is kind of lost because it's such a light value. So I re-wet the bottom part of the painting a little bit and dropped in some light color gray or some of that mixture that we still have left over from the trees. We want to keep this very light and very smooth, and that was why I added a layer of water first. But dropping in the shadows into the snow really helps kind of create more interest in the snow so that it's not a flat white area. All right, guys, I think I am done. I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if you have any questions, even advice for me, what you liked, didn't like. Any comments are appreciated. Keep it kind, and I will hopefully see you next time for another painting. Take care. Bye.